Hello and welcome to another synth soundset walkthrough. We have something new here. Look at this, shiny and new. This is quite a new synth, relatively new anyway. It's called Phonec 2, as you can see here. And it's really cool and it's very cheap, which is also cool. So what this synth does is it's very focused on sort of degraded old school kind of synth sounds. So the sort of Boards of Canada sound, stuff like that. I mean, stuff like that. There isn't really stuff like that. The Boards of Canada are quite unique in many ways. So it has that sort of very sort of over-the-top drift, degraded sound. And that all happens with this lovely thing here called Melt. And there's a circuit version and a tape version. So what you do is you just dial this in up and down to get a feel for how much sort of degradation and whirliness and driftiness that you add into it. But you'll get a feel for more of that as we go through the sounds. But this is my first sound set. Well, I've done two sound sets for Phonec 2 recently. I've been working on it for a little while. And I'm going to take you through both of them. Actually, this one's for volume 1 of what I've called Phosphor. And then we'll do another video for Phosphor 2 because it's slightly different style. So this is very much more the sort of the drifty Boards of Canada, Hauntology kind of old school vibe. So a little bit more 70s, perhaps, would be the way of describing it. So let's play through some sounds and you get a feel for just how drifty it is straight away, I think. Is another thing of gorgeousness. I like it. So you've got I'll go through it a little bit because obviously most of you won't have seen this before, but you've got oscillator section here with a bunch of different waves for the two oscillators, and then you've got the octave here for the first one, and then tuning here for the second one. So it's very focused on doing sort of fifths and other sort of blended tonal patches in that Boards of Canada style, and then you run it through the mixer here, which is very self-explanatory. You've got a filter over here, which basically is a low-pass filter. There's 4 different types of low-pass filter in there, and then you've got mix section here, which basically defines how much of the filter actually gets through. So let's move on to another sound and I'll show you what happens. So here we are with Pendle ARP. So this is 100% filter. You bring it down to, and then you see it brings through both the, so it's like almost like a parallel filter. So it lets in a certain amount of the original signal, but also keeps some of the filtered signal, which I think is quite interesting. I'm not 100% sure of how many other synths do that. I quite like it. But then there's the Melt. So this one, actually being quite aggressive here, but because it's quite a sharp envelope, you'll notice that. So over to the left, there's absolutely no drift or meltiness. And now it's going weirdly at you, and then all the way up. You'll notice it a bit more. So it's really quite over the place there. And there, no drift at all. So that's what it does. I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff over here and things that we might have a little look at. But the main thing is the melt function, which is really, really cool. Bass lines. I mean, I've been using this synth for a little while, and I have to admit that I'm a bit of an evangelist for it. I think it's really cool. In fact, I like it so much that I've organised with the guys that make it, Psychic Modulation, to provide a discount for the actual synth itself, because I know some of you won't have it, which I'll be including in my newsletter when I mention Phosphor 1 and Phosphor 2. So that if you like the sounds that you're hearing on this and you go, oh, I haven't got this synth, should I get it? You can get you'll be able to get a discount off the full price from my newsletter. So that's cool, isn't it? So it's really, really, really retro. And this particular sound set, I've gone for as I've said, the more sort of boards kind of 70s sort of drifty weirdness. More obscure patches, whereas the Phosphor 2, which we'll see in the next video, is actually more of a synthwave style sound set. I've gone for slightly more simplistic sounds. There's definitely a sort of a darkness to the sounds that this produces, which is why I feel it has that more of a 70s feel. So it's got that sort of that sort of darker, more serious sort of synth pop vibe that you got in the late 70s and very early. So sort of Human League before the Lovely Girls joined, and Cabaret Voltaire, Can, even a bit Kraftwerky in some ways, I suppose. And I do like the quirkiness of this synth, because instead of having just sort of, I'm just going to have a delay on it, it's got echo shifter. So you can fiddle around with tuning as well as the delay lines, which is rather fun. So again, if you're of a certain age, it probably remind you of some of the radiophonic sounds and basically the really quite experimental sort of synth soundtracks you were getting on a lot of British TV in the 70s, like Children of the Stones and that sort of thing. And I've mentioned Hauntology in a previous walkthrough. It's really rather lovely sort of, it's almost like sort of cross between folk music and synth music. Which is really cool. And what I like about the Hauntology kind of vibe is that it blends modern stuff that seemed modern in the 70s, like nuclear power and brutalist architecture, that kind of thing, with what remained quite sort of antiquated and folksy. So you have like the Wicker Man film, that sort of all that sort of dancing around maypoles, paganism basically. It's like a clash between the nuclear age and the pagan age. That's what hauntology is, and I think this sound set's good for it. Well, a friend of mine has a hauntology artist name that he goes under called Heartswood Institute, and I gave him this sound set to play with, and he said it was spot on for the genre. So if you are a hauntologist, you know where to And this melt feature is such fun. In fact, Psychic Modulation have actually released a effects plugin that includes the melt function and the echo shifter function and a couple of other things as well, because they've got chorus here and stuff, and an EQ filter, etc. Which you can buy separately, which is also a lot of fun. So you can take synth sounds you've made on your favourite soft synths and then give them this sort of melt factor to take them into this sort of weird, haunting place. And it really is. It's kind of out there. It's doing a thing that no other synths are doing, and I think that's a reason to get it. Because if you're ever trying to use this sort of sound, you can spend ages trying to dial it up on another synth, and whereas you just load this up and it just has this ability to do it instantly. Now I do actually have some loops on here, because with the sub and the noise oscillators, you can actually get some nice kicks and noisy sounds, hi-hats and stuff. And then again you add the melt and they've just got that sort of wandering driftiness. It is rather fun. Okay, and some pads. So even if the sound is fairly simple, with the melt and the echo shifter on, and also doing some fun stuff with the LFOs over here if you want, you get a lot of movement on very basic sounds. So nothing stands still. Probably one of the simpler sounds I've got in here. Okay, we've got a handful of sequences. Sorry, soundscapes. Really feel the nuclear age in that one. And then, as I was briefly and incorrectly stating earlier, we have some sequences. This is quite melty. Obviously, it's very specifically targeting a particular sound. So I think a lot of these sounds aren't necessarily going to be particularly useful if you're not doing something very sort of synthy and old-fashioned. But it's a hell of a lot of fun. And then a couple of synths at the back end. It's a bit mental. And there you have it. So that's what you can do with Phonec, and that's what I've done with Phonec for Phosphor Volume 1. And it really is a lot of fun. I mean, that's the main thing about this. It's quite specific in what it does. But if you want to do that thing, then this just nails it. And it does allow you to have an enormously good time doing it as well. It's quite simple to use. I mean, it's quite an old sort of school. Well, it's a fairly old-fashioned sort of GUI in the sense of it reminds me of a few things that I first saw when I came into doing this sort of thing about 10 years ago. I started getting interested in computer music. But I quite like it for that. It's different. It's not trying to be overly cool. It's not trying to be flashy and modern. It's just quite nice to look at. And although some of it seems a little daunting at first, there is it's pretty easy to pick up once you start playing it with it, and it's quite fun with these sort of randomizing. So you can randomize the melt circuit and the sequence controls, the modulation, the filter, the oscillator. So you can do a lot of mad randomizing to come up with interesting sounds or terrible sounds. But maybe for some people, terrible is also interesting. Yeah. So there you go. That's Phonec Phosphor Volume 1, and it's now time to go over and do Volume 2 video. And then I'll have done all my walkthrough videos for one day. Hurrah and huzzah! How exciting. Okay, I will see you anon. Ta-ta!